On July 17, 2024, at Sotheby's, New York, the apex Stegosaurus sold for $44.6 million, establishing a new record for natural heritage assets. This transaction marked a definitive shift from scientific specimen to high-yield portfolio diversification for the 0.01%. The acquisition by the CEO of Citadel highlights a systemic trend where extinction is treated as a non-correlated financial hedge against market volatility. This is the financialization of prehistory, where biological data is secondary to the scarcity of the physical asset. In October 2020, the T-Rex skeleton known as Stan fetched $31.8 million, disappearing into a private logistics chain before its eventual assignment to a museum in Abu Dhabi. These apex assets often enter a period of non-disclosure during multi-year transfers, complicating the public record of global scientific heritage. When the Trinity sold for $6.1 million in 2023, the auction prospectus confirmed it was a composite of 3 separate specimens excavated between 2008 and 2013. This assembly process creates a measurable variance between the market price and the actual paleontological integrity of the specimen. The 2020 Montana Supreme Court ruling in Murray v. BEJ Minerals established that fossils are classified as surface rights rather than mineral assets. This jurisdictional classification means that while federal land is protected under the 2009 Paleontological Resources Preservation Act, private land remains an unregulated extraction zone. Private landowners possess the legal authority to liquidate million-year-old stratigraphic data without federal oversight or documentation. The result is a regulatory gap where the physical past is extracted based on capital demand rather than research priority. Institutional managers at firms like BlackRock are now categorizing fossilized remains within the alternative investments class alongside fine art and private equity. This securitization is mirrored by a 14% increase in seizures of mislabeled geological samples by U.S. Customs and Border Protection between 2021 and 2024. These shipments frequently utilize undocumented transport routes to bypass international export restrictions from regions like Mongolia or Morocco. It is a high-stakes logistics operation designed to obscure the chain of custody from the excavation pit to the high-security vault. The scheduled auction of the Shen T-Rex was canceled in late 2022 after technical analysis identified 3D printed components mirroring an existing specimen. This incident exposed a systemic risk regarding the dilution of authentic fossil material with synthetic resins to inflate aesthetic volume. As the valuation of these specimens escalates, the economic incentive to manufacture authenticity grows, creating a market of Frankenstein assets. The securitization of extinction transforms every terrestrial remain into a liquid commodity, detaching history from its context and locking it behind private infrastructure. Between 2021 and 2024, U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded a 14% increase in the seizure of fossilized remains labeled as mislabeled geological samples. These shipments originate from unregulated excavation sites in Mongolia and Morocco, utilizing gray market logistics to bypass the Paleontological Resources Preservation Act. The forensic trail reveals a network of shadow brokers who reclassify biological heritage as industrial minerals to evade export duties. This administrative laundering ensures that apex specimens reach private auctions without a verified chain of custody. The cancellation of the Shen auction in 2022 highlighted a systemic risk in the valuation of prehistoric assets, the rise of the Frankenstein specimen. Technical audits revealed that the skeleton utilized 3D printed structural components to mimic the bone density of the existing Stan skeleton. This manipulation of volume allows sellers to inflate the rarity of a find while masking the actual ratio of resin to authentic mineralized bone. It is an engineering solution to a scarcity problem, where the aesthetic of extinction is manufactured in high-tech laboratories. The 2023 sale of the Trinity for $6.1 million confirmed that market demand now favors composite assembly over geological integrity. The specimen was comprised of bone fragments from 3 distinct individuals, excavated between 2008 and 2013, creating a synthetic narrative of a single organism. Without a mandatory international registry, these composite skeletons circulate as singular assets, obscuring the stratigraphic data of their origins. The result is a scientific vacuum, where the provenance of the 0.01% collection is functionally untraceable. Since 2020, 40% of high-value dinosaur auctions have concluded with anonymous buyers, shifting these assets from public view into non-disclosed private infrastructure. These acquisitions often involve sophisticated STS transfers, ship-to-ship, or secure bonded warehouses where the asset remains tax-neutral and physically isolated. For fossils like Hector the Deinonychus, which fetched $12.4 million, the transaction includes non-disclosure agreements that prevent researchers from accessing the specimen for peer-reviewed study. This is the ultimate privatization of time, where history is locked behind a wall of high-security diversification. In December 2022, the $6.1 million sale of the Maximus T-Rex skull further solidified the trend of treating cranial remains as isolated luxury sculptures. Much like Big John, the world's largest Triceratops sold for $7.7 million. These specimens are often mounted for display in private corporate lobbies or tax haven penthouses. This fragmentation of the fossil record results in the permanent loss of associated sediment data and biological context. When a specimen becomes a store of value, its scientific utility is liquidated to satisfy the demands of capital preservation. As of 2024, institutional asset managers, including BlackRock, had begun categorizing paleontological remains within the alternative investment asset class. This classification aligns prehistoric specimens with blue-chip art and private equity, establishing a new frontier for capital preservation. The transition to a securitized asset means that a specimen's value is now calculated through liquidity premiums and scarcity metrics, rather than phylogenetic data. In this environment, the fossil record is no longer a shared history, but a diversified hedge against currency devaluation. It is the final stage of the market's expansion into the deep past. In July 2022, a Gorgosaurus skeleton sold for $6.1 million at Sotheby's, further solidifying a standardized price floor for apex carnivores. This trend is mirrored by the $6.1 million sale of the Maximus T-Rex skull, creating a predictable valuation model for high net worth portfolios. These transactions often utilize complex jurisdictional structures to ensure that the physical asset remains tax neutral during its appreciation phase. The standardization of these prices suggests a mature market where extinction is a quantifiable luxury. As prices stabilize, the barrier for public institutions to acquire these specimens becomes insurmountable. The scheduled 2025 and 2026 opening of the Natural History Museum Abu Dhabi, featuring the $31.8 million T-Rex stand, represents the final destination for many private acquisitions. While these loans appear as public gestures, they often serve to legitimize the provenance of specimens acquired through non-disclosed private transactions. The museum becomes a high-security vault with a public-facing window where the state acts as the ultimate custodian for private capital. This synergy between sovereign wealth and private collections creates a monopoly on the narrative of evolution. The history of life on Earth is being curated by the highest bidder. The decade-long legal battle over the dueling dinosaurs, which saw an appraisal of $7 to $9 million, set the precedent for the current hyperinflation. This case highlighted the volatility of fossil ownership when scientific value collides with the rights of private landholders. The resolution of such conflicts usually favors the liquidation of the asset to settle the financial stakes of the litigants. This legal friction accelerates the removal of fossils from their geological context to satisfy the demands of the courtroom and the counting house. Every hour spent in litigation is an hour lost to the preservation of the specimen's integrity. The securitization of extinction ensures that the most significant chapters of biological history are now locked within private infrastructure. As these assets are traded between portfolios, the physical remains are subjected to the same stresses as any other liquid commodity. The result is a fragmented record, where the truth of the past is only available to those with the capital to unlock the vault. Subscribe to Leviathan Files. Stay curious, and remember, the truth remains a private asset.